I'm Dr. George Flynn, and welcome to In-Depth TV. Today we're going to talk a little bit about memory and your memory of names and places and people and events. We're going to talk about that because a lot of people will want to remember a name. Have you ever wanted to remember a name? It was there on the tip of your tongue and you really struggled with it, trying to remember it, a name or a place or an event. It's right there, especially if you're getting ready to walk up to somebody and you know their name, you know a lot about them, but what is their name? You know it. You know it, but you can't come up with it. So how do you handle your memory, and how can we help your memory and help you enhance your memory so that it's not a struggle and it's not so tough? Well, first of all, I'm Dr. George Flynn. I'm a physician, a radiologist, and I used to think I was one type of memory. Now, there are three types of memory, at least three. One is visual, and a visual person, I'll give you the characteristics of that. One is auditory, and one is kinesthetic or feeling. So your memory has a lot to do with that. And you can just remember if you smell a smell, it takes you back to your childhood of baking cookies, or a perfume. It might remind you of a grandmother or a grandchild, or it's just interesting that all your senses are connected to memory. So here's the key to it. One of my grandchildren, I love talking about my grandchildren. I've got three, and one of my grandchildren talks really fast. And there was a contest in school, how many decimals, or how many, 3.1415, whatever, how many could you remember? And I asked how this grandchild could remember all of these decimals, because the contest, she won the contest. And I think she remembered 100 or 70 or 200 or some number of decimals in pi. It was a lot. Whatever it was, she won the contest in the school. And I asked her, how did you do that? Because I was very interested in her memory and how she could remember so many things so accurately. And she said, well, I just looked at the paper in my mind and I read off the numbers. And I thought, oh my gosh, this child has a photographic memory. And I thought, how in the world can you do that kind of thing? And she just assumed everybody could do it. All right, that's a visual person. A visual person is one that talks fast. They're talking in pictures. So these pictures are flying by so fast that they're having to talk fast to keep up with how rapidly their mind is working. Now, we come to another grandchild who is interested in music, very interested in that kind of thing, music and sounds, and that's as an auditory person. They talk a little bit slower and they listen a lot. That's because they're interested in sounds. They want to express themselves by sound. They want to listen to sounds. They take in information by sounds. Just like the other child, the visual, that's a visual child that takes in by pictures. Another one of my grandchildren takes in by sound. Yet a third one, I've got a third grandchild, and this grandchild thinks in feelings. And so they talk slowly, a little more slowly, and they think about how this is feeling to them. They have to process that feeling, then they can talk about it, or then they can show you, or then they can discuss it with you. But they want to know, they're always checking in with their feelings. you're one of the three. Really? No, you're all three of the three. You're visual, you're auditory, and your feelings, you're kinesthetic. You're all three. But you're predominantly one. Which is the most, the most sensitive one that you have? Do you see things? Do you hear things? Or do you feel things? Look at your language. Now, did you hear what I said? Look at your language. That was a visual statement. And you'll say, well, it looks okay to me. Well, that looks right. I get the picture. I can see that. That's all visual talk. And if you are auditory, you'll be saying, well, it sounds right to me. I like the sound of that. Couldn't sound better. I hear you. That is auditory thinking. Now you come to feeling. Well, it feels pretty good to me. Well, that deal just seems to feel right. I get a good feeling about this. That is kinesthetic. Now these people have all three, but they predominantly one method of memory. What does this have to do with remembering names and places and faces? Well, if you meet someone, you first find out, are you visual, auditory, or kinesthetic? If you meet someone and you're a visual person, you'll remember their face easily because you're a visual person. And when you remember their face, you've just got to figure out a way to put a name with the face. Now, some of the tricks I've seen people talk about is you imagine them having their name, a label on their forehead with their name on it. And then you can remember the face. Or you can imagine some picture of them doing something with their name. Like, if you take the name Smith, you can have the person hammering with a hammer like a smith or a metalsmith. But you can remember that by that odd picture. If you're auditory, you hear the name. You hear that name, and you'll likely remember it because you're going to take the picture of the face and associate it with the sound that you hear. You're going to have a sound, and you'll probably remember the sound of their voice, but then their picture of their face, you'll say, like the person named Smith, you'll have that picture, you'll have Smith written over their forehead, and you'll have the sound saying Smith, 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 and then you'll remember it. Now, if you come to the feelings, say, you'll remember someone by how they make you feel. Do they make you feel good inside? Do they make you feel bad inside? How do they make you? Do they make you feel generous? Do they make you feel stingy? How do they make you feel? Are you elated to see them, or are you depressed to see them? And then you can take how they make you feel and associate that with their name and their face, just like we did the other one. So you've got a little bit of a hook into how to remember names and faces. You say, well, what if I meet 10 people named Smith? By the time you really need to remember it, it will be in your subconsciousness. And you won't need to use that little trick. All we're using the hook for, the trick, is to help you get it from your conscious mind into your subconscious mind where you can remember. That's the easiest way to do it. But if you go around and meet 10 people at a party, you want to remember their names. You want to remember their faces. A lot of people remember, well, I was standing over there in that corner and they were eating meatballs or spaghetti or something. And, that's how I remember them. I can remember them because I can associate them having meatballs and spaghetti all over their head, and their name was Smith, and I saw it running down over the name Smith. Just get crazy visual. And that helps you get the memory and maintain that memory for you. Now, I'm like you. I kept thinking, well, okay, which am I? And I always thought, I love radio, I love TV, I love broadcasting. I always thought, I'm an auditory person. I listen to sounds. I listen to a lot of people. I'm an auditory person. And the other day, I was reading x-rays. And I had an x-ray up on the view box. And I was reading it off of a computer monitor. And I was looking at the x-ray. And I started dictating the x-ray. And I noticed myself closing my eyes after I'd looked at the x-ray and dictating. And I said, why am I doing that? Because I opened my eyes and looked again, same x-ray. But when I closed my eyes, I could see that x-ray, I could see the detail, I could see everything I wanted to see. And of course, I opened my eyes again and looked at it and said, am I sure that that was right? I double and triple check them. But I noticed myself doing the visual things, and I said, my gosh, maybe I'm visual. Okay. In certain situations, you can be any of the three. That's the whole key to it. In a social situation, you may be visual. You may be auditory. You may be kinesthetic. Just like I'm visual in certain situations, I'm auditory in certain situations. In certain ones, I'm kinesthetic. You don't have to be, stuck in one mode or another. You're not. It varies quite a bit with what's going on around you. It varies, and you can be visual, auditory, or kinesthetic predominantly in different situations. That's why I didn't want you to get too hung up on why you heard these definitions, and you've heard them before. And if you haven't, you now have, because I want you to pay attention to the language that you're using. That will let you know in that situation, predominantly, like if you're negotiating a contract, if you're interacting with someone one-on-one. Well, it sounds pretty good to me. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. You're in auditory mode. And I've been in all at the beginning of this show, I said, you'll see how that makes you feel, or you'll see what happens. And I was in visual mode. And I can go into kinesthetic mode, and when I do, I'll see how that makes me feel. And you noticed I slowed down because I went into kinesthetic mode. So many people that you'll see on stage or you'll hear on stage are slowing down, or some people talk very fast because they're nervous about public speaking. And the kinesthetic, the feelings take over and it floods them. Some people will slow down quite a bit because they want to see how they're feeling. They want to check in with their feelings, see if they're feeling any better. Some people speed up so they can get through it, so they can, get rid of this nervousness. It all depends on who you are with and where you are and what you're doing. But this memory technique that you can use all the time will help you remember the other person's name, what you were doing together, and what was going on while you were interacting with them. I hope that's been of help to you to understand visual, auditory, and kinesthetic modes, and the fact that you are one or the other in different situations. You're primarily one or the other. You're all three all the time, but you're primarily one or the other in different situations. I'm Dr. George Flynn. You've been watching, hearing, and feeling about In-Depth TV. Glad you were here. See you next time.